now 44. That was, he limited 44. So what he said is you can no longer work people for 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week on the same pay. You're going to have to pay them overtime if they work more than 44 hours. Usually that's time and a half, and on holidays double time.
Is that the third thing?
No, nope, still on the same, still second pay. So he raised the minimum wage to 25 cents an hour, and he limited the work week to 44 hours, stating that if you had an employee work more than 44 hours in a week, you had to pay them overtime. And generally that's time and a half on regular days and twice as much on holidays. Okay? Okay, the third thing that happened during his second term occurred on January 11th of 1935. January 11th of 1935, when Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Pacific Ocean from Hawaii to Oakland, California. The female version of who? Charles Lindbergh. Okay, she wanted to prove that women had sauce too to fly, and she became the first woman on January 11th, 1935 to fly solo across the Pacific Ocean. Who flew across the Atlantic? Lindbergh. She flew across the Pacific from Honolulu to Oakland. Now you might say, does anybody remember how many miles Lindbergh's was? Somebody look that up real quick. Like, how many miles did Lindbergh go? Can I tell you that? He went a little bit farther, but the reason all the way across the Pacific would not have been equal because there's more Pacific Ocean than Atlantic Ocean. So that's why she went from Hawaii.
We flew around 3,600.
Okay, 3,600 miles. Hers was 2,400, so pretty good. But if she'd have flown like from Oakland, California, clear to Japan, it would have been an equal record. So she tried to do it. That was about as equal as she's going to get. Now, in 1937, she was getting close to her 40th birthday. And she decided she wanted to be the first woman to fly around the world. Okay? So in 1937, as she neared her 40th birthday, she thought, you know what, I'd like to be the first woman to fly around the world. So, on June 1st of 1937, she and her navigator, a fellow by the name of Fred Noonan, departed from Miami to begin the 29,000-mile journey. So on June 1st of 1937, Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, departed from Miami, Florida to begin what was to be a 29,000-mile flight. Now obviously, kiddos, she didn't fly that non-stop, right? You couldn't do that, so they landed periodically to fuel, rest, eat, etc. Okay? Well, by June 29th, in that 28-day period, they had flown 22,000 miles and landed in New Guinea with only 7,000 miles left to complete their goal. So 28 days later, on June 29th of 1937, Earhart and Noonan landed their plane in New Guinea, fuel up, rest a bit, with only 7,000 miles left to go. And they rested a couple, 3 days. And on July 2nd of 1937, they left New Guinea at 10 o'clock in the morning to complete their trip. So they rested a couple days, and on July 2nd of 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off from New Guinea at 10 a.m. to complete their goal. The trouble was, no one ever heard or saw any evidence of them ever to this date. And rescue attempts commenced. They became the most extensive air and sea search in naval history. So as soon as they found out she went missing, the Navy got involved and did the most extensive air and sea search in American history. Finally, 17 days later, on July 19th, after spending $4 million and scouring more than 250,000 square miles of ocean, the government called off the search. So on July 2nd, 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off from New Guinea at 10 a.m. and were never heard from again. Rescue attempts commenced. They became the most extensive air and sea search in naval history. And finally, 17 days later, on July 19th, after spending $4 million, that would be about $74 million today, and scouring more than 250,000 square miles of ocean, the United States government called off the search. There has been no evidence found to this date on the whereabouts of either one of those individuals or their plane. That would be a stunning discovery if anybody could come up with that. Obviously the bodies you're never going to find, but certainly the plane maybe, but never to this day. So that is the third thing of significance. Now, anybody know anything about Amelia Earhart in this area?
She has a house.
She has a partially built cabin outside of Kirby. You know where that, or not Kirby, but, no, what'd you say? No, I know, but you go, what's that? Kerwin. Okay, and what you do if you're interested, it's my wife and I just stumbled on it. So we're driving, old people drive around when they get older. That's what you do for fun. So my wife wanted to go for a drive. Said, let's go to Matitsi, let's go to Matitsi. So we went to Matitsi and took, the turn you take to go to the Sunshine Reservoirs. And about halfway between Matitsi and those reservoirs, there's this turn to this place called Kerwin. We never heard of it, so my wife said, I turned down there. So we're driving down this nice paved road, which eventually will turn into a gravel road. And off to the left are all these really nice farms with the biggest white-tailed bucks I've ever seen. Just looking at you like, hey, you want to shoot me? It was incredible. I mean, it was, and I'm just amazed. And my wife said, well, just keep going, keep going. We went all the way to the end of the road where there was a parking lot. And we pulled in there, and by God, there was Amelia Earhart's partially constructed cabin that they had started and then obviously didn't finish after she went missing. So that's kind of a cool little bit of history right here in our area, if you ever want to see that. The fourth thing happened in 1939 when a musical fantasy film called The Wizard of Oz was released in movie theaters. How many in here, honestly, have seen The Wizard of Oz? Quite a few. Quite a few last period, too. I remember seeing it when I was about 7, scared the heck out of me. Because it was black and white with the Wicked Witch of the West after Dorothy, right? And I'm going, it was kind of traumatic. In today's life, they probably would have considered that too much for a 7-year-old. I don't know. But it came out in 1939. The movie starred Judy Garland, not Judy Garland Landon, Alfred Landon. That should be scratched off. I actually had a kid in 6th grade put that on the test when I asked him who the actress was. They put Judy Garland, Alfred Landon. She was a 16-year-old actress, and her performance in The Wizard of Oz did what to her career? Boom, launched her career. Okay, launched her career. And she eventually became one of the most recognizable film stars in American history. Now, I don't know if you've seen her or not, you know the story. She was from, we're not in Kansas anymore. Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore. She lived in a farm in Kansas and had a bad dream, and I won't spoil it for you. Kind of ironic, though, while you guys will be watching U571, the other class, not the other AP class, but the regular class is watching The Wizard of Oz. They want to see The Wizard of Oz. I guess we could show you either one if you were interested. But anyway, it was quite a budget for that film. Way back in 1939, the budget was $2.8 million, which would be about $52 million today. They spent a lot of money on this film. And because of that, they didn't make one dime profit from 1939 to 1949. It was in 1949 when they re-released it. In other words, it ran its course and they didn't make any money. So what they decided to do, because it was pretty popular, run it again. And the first one, like I mentioned, was in black and white. That's how I saw it. I'm sure you haven't seen it in black and white. And then they put color to it, and it's a lot different. And I tell you, it can flip through the channels every once in a while on one of these older movie channels, and boom, there it'll be, The Wizard of Oz. So people are still watching this thing today, which came out in 1939. Now, I'll give you, no, I didn't see it in the movie theater. I'm not that old. I know what you're thinking. Geez, you probably wasn't, he was there at 39, saw it. No, that's not true. It came on television for the first time in 1956. I was born in 1958, so I'm guessing I probably watched it when I was in the early 60s. I was 7 or 8 years old, but I remember scared the hell out of But anyway, it was first shown on television in 1956, and you can still see it today. Now, I'm going to take you kiddos to the Library of Congress when we go on to our DC trip. And you know that every single copyright in the world is in the Library of Congress? Anything that's been copyrighted, they have a copy of it either, you know, regular or on microfiche or whatever. So every book in the world has a copyright for the most part, right? They have access to every book in the world. Every movie has a copyright, you know, so they have copies of that. According to the Library of Congress, The Wizard of Oz is the most watched film in world history. Most watched film in world history. Okay, how's that sound? With that said, we're going to do a little talking about something that doesn't have to do with Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal.